Hey everyone, it is George Couros. Welcome back to another episode of the Innovator's Mindset podcast. And a little question for you, if you want to throw this in the comments. Do you like it better when I use the music? And I do that to introduce guests, but I just kind of go solo. I don't necessarily need music, but do I need a theme song? Do I need something? Do I need to it's the George podcast, something like that? Anyways, just wondering if you want to, I'd love to hear your input. So if you're going to write in the comments, that'd be great. Please like and subscribe. I never say that, but today I am. I want to share something with you I was thinking about, and there's a chapter that really resonates with people, and it's titled Somebody Hates You from the book Forward Together. And I say right out, it's probably one of the most true things that I will always say. And that there's sometimes maybe someone hates you and in their mind it's justified, that they don't think you're good at your job. They're frustrated with how you do things. But sometimes people will hate you just because you are good at your job, and maybe there's a little jealousy there too. So it's not always justified, and maybe it's never justified. I don't know if we should really hate people, but I think it's really important to share that sometimes we just don't get along with certain people, and that's okay. And it really kind of framed a lot of my thinking in the leadership team that I tried to develop. And I've talked about this before. One of the things that was really important to me was hiring someone to be my assistant principal who was not like me, who had a very different view, not necessarily on where we needed to go, but maybe how we would get there. And my first person that I hired, her and I used to argue about stuff all the time, including when she was a teacher on my staff when I was assistant principal, and when she was a principal when I was principal. And that's why I hired her, is because she actually had a different viewpoint. She saw things I didn't see, but she also appealed to people that I didn't. And I think a lot of times in leadership, you see kind of just clones of the same people, that they kind of act the same way, they are the same way. And the reason it was really important to me was to maybe somebody would not like me on the staff, but they would like her. And so we could reach them through one of us. And I know that's a weird thing to say, because not everyone actually has an opportunity that, if you're a superintendent and you're the only one, or you're principal and there's no assistant principal. But I think it is really about surrounding yourself with people who have a shared vision of where you want to go, but maybe different ways to actually get there. And I'm going to share a story from my teaching days that really was kind of a shocking moment for me, but it really gave me some good perspective on this idea that just sometimes people just don't like you. And I'm not saying this is a negative thing, but it just kind of puts things in perspective. And to share a story about someone not liking me, this is something that I kind of do in Forward Together. I really want people to kind of learn through some of my mistakes. And I say this often in the book, that I want my hindsight to be your foresight and just kind of think differently about things. But I think it's easier to get people to talk about contentious things, some of the issues that we have connecting with each other, when they point at themselves first, which is one of the principles that I share. And this is actually a quote that I share in the book. When you share your past mistakes, your growth process, and a willingness to learn, it can inspire confidence in others to do the same. Remember, you can't make people change, but you can create an environment where change is more likely to happen. That environment is more likely to be created if someone can say to themselves, if they can get better, then maybe so can I. So I share this with you all, and I've thought about this so much, in my career. And I had a student in my class, and I'm just going to call her Lisa. That's not actually her name, but Lisa was a brilliant student. I actually taught her in a grade 9 math class. And if you know anything about me, that was not my choice to teach grade 9 math. It was just like one of those classes that no one else could teach it at the time. It just didn't fit schedules. So I begged not to teach it. So I think I was maybe a little nervous that some of the students knew more about math than I did. And if there was anyone who would have known more about math in grade 9, teaching it, it would have been Lisa. And I will tell you, that year, she was a handful. I really struggled with her. I had a really hard time with her. This is really early on in my teaching career. And weirdly enough, I share this story with you. Her and I got along amazingly well later in her career. We had a very common connection with our love of basketball, and I would coach her a little bit. I never was her actual coach, but she would always ask me for advice about stuff in basketball. So we got along really, really well. But that year, it was very hard to teach her. And I just felt she had so much attitude. She was very disrespectful to me. That's what I thought at that time. And this is something you shouldn't do in education. And I think some people still do it, which is kind of weird to me. This is a practice we got rid of very early in my career, but not at this point. So Lisa basically knew everything in math that I was teaching. If you just took her content knowledge, she would have been 100%. She just had no issues with anything I was teaching. She's probably, I probably could have challenged her a little bit more. And as the year progressed, it's funny because I did challenge her a little bit more, not to be challenging, but to like push her. I remember, giving her some problems with a group of students saying like, hey, these are actually things you'll be doing in grade 11. She's like, why would you give this to us? It's like, it's too hard. It's too complicated. And then I remember her and that group figured it out and they were so proud of themselves. I'm like, you have to learn to struggle. One of my biggest issues in school was early on when elementary, I never struggled with anything. And then when high school got a little bit harder for me, when I didn't know how to struggle. I know that's a weird thing to say, that if you don't actually struggle in school at all, that could actually set you up for failure later. So I was very intent on that. And I remember just the appreciation she had at that moment. That's like, okay, I get what you're doing. You're like pushing me. Maybe that's why her and I got along later. But this is probably the first term of class. And like I said, she knew everything. She would have got 100% on every test. It was great. This is the thing that I really hope schools are not doing anymore. We had basically attitude marks, right? So you get 100%. So it wasn't like you weren't being graded on your knowledge of the curriculum of what you're doing only. It was like, do you do your homework? What's your attitude like? Things like that. And if you know all of it, then but you're like docking marks because of attitude, then you're not really getting a proper understanding of that student's ability in the subject. Now, I'm a big believer that if you have some struggles, there's other places you can report that. You can have those conversations, right? Because I think, social skills, you can be the smartest person in the world, but if you can't connect with people, it's not going to really help you, right? And so I think that's something that really matters to me. So I remember that, I think 10% of my grading that year was on attitude. And so Lisa, knew everything, but I like dinged her on attitude. So I think out of 10, I gave her 5 out of 10 because she knows she was like lippy, she was rude to me and stuff like that. And we just didn't get along. And I remember actually her mom coming in for parent-teacher interviews. And this was a moment for me, and I think it's a good one. She said to me, she said, hey, Lisa, Lisa's never had as low of marks ever in math. And I'm thinking, she has 95%. Like, what are you talking about? She's like, she has the best mark in the entire grade. Like she's doing well. And then like, that was my first thought. And then I said to her, yeah, hey, I appreciate that. And she is an amazing student. She knows her stuff inside out. But her attitude's really bad in my class. And she really struggles. And, I can find her like combative sometimes. So she lost marks on her attitude. I gave her 5 out of 10. And I will never forget this because it wasn't an awakening in the moment, but it helped me later. She said, well, she only struggles with you. I was like, what? What are you talking about? There's no way. So I remember this kind of like, no, there's no way. There's no way that she only struggles with me. So I remember talking to other teachers on the staff and like, cause I got along with students very well. I'm not the brightest guy, but you're typically, I connected pretty well with students. So I was like kind of shocked. And I said, hey, is Lisa's a problem for you, right? And they're like, no, she's amazing. And I was like, what? So I talked to every teacher that had her. I was the only one having the issue. And there's a reason that I share this with you all, because it was like a good perspective, because I was punishing her because we maybe just had different personalities, right? Just different connection. And that's something that, it is bound to happen in your career at some point. You just might have a different personality than a student. You might have a different personality than a staff member, and you just might not get along. And that's okay. I think, of course, you need to be respectful, and I get all that stuff too. But I just kind of assumed she was bad for everybody. I never thought, hey, maybe it's something I'm doing. Maybe something I'm disconnected. And maybe we connected better later on because I had an awareness of that. And maybe I changed my attitude a little bit. And like, we rarely hear teachers saying like, hey, maybe I need to like think differently about how I connect with a student because obviously there's some disconnect here. And I share that with you because it really shifted a lot of my thinking. And I know this is weird, but later on in my career, when some students didn't get along with me, I was okay with it because as long as they got along with somebody, if they were not disrespectful, if they're not rude, and I didn't do the attitude marks after that year, it was something that shaped me. So when I say like somebody hates you, it's not to be rude, it's not to be mean. Just sometimes I was going to say, you know, our personalities are like oil and vinegar, but as a Greek person, oil and vinegar is like the best thing. Oil and water is actually what the saying is. And so I think not to necessarily take it personal, but you can actually do something to approve it. And I think part of it too is when some students will really connect with a different teacher. Some teachers will connect better with other students. Some admin will connect with, you know, their staff a little bit differently as well. It is so easy to take all this stuff personally, but I think that's one of the beautiful things in education is that teachers will be exposed to different teachers. They'll have different people. We will have different administrators. It is about creating a space where, yeah, I might not be the person for you, but there's got to be another teacher in this school that you connect with. The concern would be, does this student not get along with anybody, right? And that's a whole different thing. Or does this teacher not get along with anybody? Is this teacher always an issue? Is this student always an issue? So I just want to share that with you because I think sometimes we get really stuck into this. We have an issue, and it was a good moment for me because sometimes the kid that struggles in your class, not in anybody else's, and it might be something that you can think differently about, right? I was big on my beginning of my career. I am the teacher, you will adjust to me. And as I grew, I really learned how important it's not only in teaching, but in leadership, school administration, that I'm the teacher and I need to figure out how to adjust to you. And sometimes it's me changing my practice, or maybe it's hiring someone who's very different than me because they appeal to people that I don't as well. It's just something I think about all the time. And it, you know, it's like kind of it was funny because her mom and I like still talk, like, you know, and I think she, you know, she was older than me. And I think it was her way of kind of coaching me about some of that stuff too. We never want disrespectful kids. And Lisa honestly never was disrespectful, but we just, you know, just personality conflict. And that happens sometimes. And so when I share about that, somebody hates you, it's not about just trying to reach everybody, but yourself, but trying to find different ways that we can reach everyone. Maybe it's through a change in what you do, or maybe it's connecting them with someone else who might have a different approach. So it's something I really focus on. When I share in the book that we spend 80% of our time on 20% of our people, and it should be 80% of our time on 80% of our people, it's not because I'm ignoring the 20%, but I know that when you spend time with the 80%, sometimes they actually better the 20%. They actually create a different culture. People are more excited. So it's just something I was thinking about. I want to share with you because it's always like I get this reminder. It's like my Roman Empire. I kind of think about this once a month or something, about just that moment and how it was kind of an awakening for me that not every person's going to like you, or you're not going to get along with every student. You're not going to like every teacher. We do our best that we can every single day. And I appreciate you spending this time. If you're here right to the end, thanks so much. That means a lot to me. But I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for all you do. Take care.